their inconsistency will feel like love. Well, it's not love. It's emotional trauma memories disguised as chemistry. You see, your childhood is actually choosing your partners for you. You don't keep choosing the wrong partner because something is wrong with you. You keep choosing the wrong partner because you were emotionally programmed to. You see, your childhood is actually choosing your partners for you. And I'm going to show you how in this video. So until you learn how to choose from your authentic self, I want you to think about how many times you've heard yourself say this. Never again. Or why do I always pick the wrong people? Or this time it'll be different. Or I'm done with toxic partners. Or you know what, I'm going to choose better. And then what happens? It kind of starts off the same. The next person feels a bit different, maybe exciting, maybe a little safer or more refreshing, until what? The exact same patterns show up again. The distance, the inconsistency, the emotional unavailability, the volatility, the lack of accountability. Maybe it's the love bombing or the shutdown or the feeling that you're always walking on eggshells, or maybe it's just the loneliness inside the relationship. The thing is, you think you're making a new choice, but you're actually reliving an old, unhealed emotional wound. Now, you're not doing this consciously, and you're not doing it intentionally. But emotionally and neurobiologically, that's exactly what's happening to you. That's how the brain and body works. So you're not choosing a new partner. You're choosing a new version of an old story. That's because every one of us carries two things into adulthood: a childhood emotional blueprint and a worst day cycle. There are 4 stages to it. The first one is trauma, then fear, then shame, then denial. It's a loop that every single person on this planet is caught in, and it influences every part of our life, especially our relationships. I'm going to walk you through it. So that worst day cycle, that emotional blueprint, it becomes the autopilot program for every relationship we ever enter. You see, your childhood emotional blueprint isn't made up of your memories. It's not the stories you tell about your past. It's not what your parents did either right or maybe wrong. Your blueprint is basically the emotional definition of love that your nervous system absorbed. And almost all of this happened before you even had language, before you even had memories. You see, just by observing your parents, the way they dealt with each other, the way they spoke to you, the emotions they were experiencing at that time of their life, everything that they were going through, you picked up on emotional tones, on volumes. Your body and your emotional system registered consistency or absence, presence, chaos, silence, withdrawal, overwhelm, criticism, perfectionism. Maybe there was shame. Maybe there was too much emotional responsibility, or the exact opposite, complete emotional invisibility. The point is, you didn't learn any of this cognitively. You learned it emotionally and somatically through your body just by observing your parents. See, children have no emotional boundaries. Whatever our parents' emotional condition is, children, like a straw, just suck it right in. And that develops their emotional blueprint and the beginning of their worst day cycle before they even have consciousness. So your adult relationships don't follow what we've all been told love is through, TV and movies and love songs. What they follow are your emotions and what your emotions and your body remembers love to be from when you were a child. So what this means is, if as a child love felt inconsistent, when you get around a person who you find attractive, their inconsistency will feel like love. If your love as a child felt like caretaking, caretaking's going to feel like home to you. If it felt like performing, performing will feel like safety. If it felt like managing emotions, emotional management will feel like your purpose. If love felt distance, distance will be everything that you desire. If it felt unavailable, well, unavailability would be just like a magnet. You'd get those intense butterflies that just feel amazing to you. You see, you don't get to choose what feels good. That's because the way our brain and body works, it chooses what's familiar. Your nervous system confuses familiarity with safety. See, most people think that attraction is about chemistry or butterflies or intensity or that spark and excitement, that passion, and you hear everybody, I'm waiting for my flame? There's that new thing, my certain flame. There's no such thing. That's not how the brain and body works. Those feelings are actually alarm bells. They're literally screaming at you. You have just activated this person who's so gorgeous and so perfect for you has just activated your childhood wound. Now I'm smiling. I want to make it clear. It seems like I'm happy for everyone's misery. The reason I'm smiling is when I discovered it, it's like the world made sense. And so instead of love being so darn confusing and all of these terrible feelings, it's like, now I know what's going on. And that's why I'm doing this video. I want you to know what's going on so you don't feel so crazy inside. So don't misunderstand my smiling is me enjoying your misery. I'm smiling because if you pay attention to this stuff, your misery will end. That's why I get so excited by it. So anyway, I diverted. The butterfly feelings, that magnetism, everything, that massive attraction that everybody's searching for, and if they don't have it, they're like, this person isn't my one, my dual flame, I think that's what it's called. What you've activated in your emotional blueprint and your worst day cycle is the exact emotional chemical cocktail that your body releases when you encounter someone who matches your emotional blueprint. Your brain immediately recognizes this person feels like my childhood. This must be love. Well, it's not love. It's emotional trauma memories disguised as chemistry. That doesn't mean you shouldn't pick these people, but if you don't know that this is what's going on, and you both join to become healers of each person's emotional blueprint memory that's working against you and join together and get them to work for you, you're just going to repeat the worst day cycle in your relationships. So that's why when you come up against really what is an available person, they feel boring. That healthy person feels like flat. The stable type of person just, too nice. The one who can be present feels completely weird and unfamiliar. So it's not really that they're boring. It's that they don't activate that old fear-based emotional chemical addiction, that emotional blueprint in the worst day cycle that you're stuck in. You see, you're chemically wired to choose the parent who couldn't choose you. Listen to the way I said that. Who couldn't choose you. You see, for centuries, we've never dealt with emotions, not at this depth. So I'm not here to blame parents. Every parent is always, I believe almost every parent is trying their hardest to love their child. But nobody's been taught this stuff. So there's gaps. There's a disconnect between what's in their heart and the execution, and that leaves wounds in us all, not intentionally. It's just part of being human. And so your parent did their best, and, not but, because it's true, they did their best, and they were perfectly imperfect. And those perfect imperfections left these wounds. So let's break down how those perfectly imperfect moments your parents had, created the worst day cycle and how the worst day cycle chooses for you. Well, the first stage, as I said earlier, is trauma, which happens when you experienced any hurtful moment in childhood, any emotionally hurtful moment in childhood. Trauma isn't the big stuff. I mean, it is the big stuff, but trauma gets mischaracterized anytime you have a negative emotional experience in childhood, which is millions of times. It creates this cycle. It's the spark that starts the flame. And in that moment, when you experience that first hurtful moment, trauma, your brain and body and your emotional blueprint drew conclusions about yourself. Some of those might be, I'm too much, or I'm not enough, or love has to be earned, or I have to fix everything. Or maybe it's my feelings aren't safe, or connection is conditional. Or maybe for you it was I'm only lovable when I perform. Whatever it may be, any of those hurtful moments, when you experience any of those, it triggers stage 2, fear. This is when your nervous system becomes actually emotionally and chemically addicted to that original wounding. And so it produces really an inherent draw to search out in your adult life the exact same unpredictability, inconsistency, the tension, maybe the pursuit or with the withdrawal dynamic, the same shame, the same abandonment, the same emotional distance. It's not doing this because you somehow enjoy experiencing all this chaos. It's because of the way our brain works. See, the way our brain looks at the world is, it says, you know what? I survived yesterday, which is safer than experiencing something I've never known. So your brain doesn't know right from wrong, good from bad. It looks at the world through the lens of, if I've already done this, I've survived it, that's safe. To experience anything I've never known, too scary, let's repeat the old pattern. That's how all brains work. That's why it's a cycle. That's why the chemical, the combination of the trauma and fear create a brain loop that repeat that emotional program. So what happens is that fear becomes familiar, and that familiar feeling starts to become desirable. Butterflies, twin flame. All of that childhood pain and the combination of the trauma and the fear creates stage 3, shame. Now, when we experience shame, it helps to create and form our false adapted identity, basically a persona. And all of this, you have to remember that the first 7 years of life, we're in a theta brainwave state. We're in hypnosis. So everybody's like, no, that's not true. Childhood was great. Well, you're not even consciously aware of what's happening in your first 7 years of your life. All of these emotional experiences are happening, and your persona is constantly adapting all of these false rules, all of these things you notice. Love isn't safe, love's conditional. It's happening in those first 7 years before cognition fully comes online. So this adaptation gets formed before you're consciously aware. That's why as an adult, you're like, I can't make sense of this. Why do I keep picking the same person? Why is this happening to me? And so you think you're in your authentic self, whether you're 30, 60. If you haven't done recovery work on your worst day cycle and learned about the authentic self cycle and uncover all of this, you're an adult who's living as a child, especially in your relationship, and that's the disconnect. So this false adapted identity, for some, it becomes a voice that says, this relationship fell apart because it's me. I'm not worth them being consistent. Or maybe it's something like, if I were lovable, they'd choose me. Or maybe you feel like you have to earn love, or you need to be better. Your needs are too much. Now there's the polar opposite side. So what I just described is what's typically known as the disempowered love addict codependent. There's a polar opposite side that people aren't aware of. The falsely empowered codependent, who's love avoidant. For them, it becomes really the opposite. I won't let anyone close to me. I'm not going to get hurt again. If I don't need anything, I can't be hurt. I'll rely on myself. I'll stay in control. It's safer to not even get attached. I'll just pursue my hobbies and I'll just focus on my work. Something outside of the relationship. In other words, distance, a lack of intimacy and connection. That's what you're going to pursue if you're on the falsely empowered, love avoidant codependent scale. So do you see, these are two false persona adapted in polar opposite ways based on the emotional blueprint you experienced in childhood. So what's driving your attraction is your shame. It's towards people who confirmed the original beliefs, usually the parent who couldn't choose you. And so all of that shame creates a false persona. It's that the only way we can survive it, because think of it, as a child, if we got into truth about our parents' perfect imperfections and all these things we experienced, it'd be too much. Our whole lives and safety depend on them. So we can't admit the truth of what we're experiencing. And that kicks us in to stage 4, denial. And so those shame personas, whether it's the falsely empowered or the disempowered, they create mantras that say, I'm the strong one, or I'm the caretaker, I'm the listener, I'm the achiever, I'm the easy one, the calm one, I'm the unproblematic one, I'm the rescuer, the peacemaker, I'm the stabilizer. Always have it together. Whatever it is, these personas are your prison. So you date through your false self, and then you're attracting people who also love your false persona, and you love yours. We're never seeing each other. We're just seeing the masks that neither of us, because of denial, are even aware we're wearing. And that's the other thing about denial. Denial always makes them the problem. We can't see ourselves. We're protecting ourselves from that underlying shame that created the false persona. So most people with the relationship issues are saying, I can't find them. What they really need to be saying is, I haven't found me, my authentic self. That's the gap in your process. So your relationships aren't failing because of who you are. They're failing because you're not actually in them. You're not there. You're relating through this protective mask, and so are they. So the reason you can't attract or choose a healthy partner is because a healthy partner needs emotional presence. They need emotional availability. They need truth. They need boundaries, honest communication, reciprocal connection. But if your childhood didn't prepare you for that, if you were trained to hide your feelings or soothe other people's feelings, or overfunction, or self-abandon, or perform, or maybe just stuff and manage your emotions, or avoid conflict, or prove your worth, or earn connection, you could never say no. Oh my God, that would be the worst thing ever. If you learned any of those things, that's why you can't attract healthy love, because healthy love requires our authentic self, not the false persona hidden behind the worst day cycle and the early emotional blueprint we all develop. So for those unable to find the relationship you're looking for, all you're bringing to your relationship is that protective self. Your authentic self is hidden behind your emotional blueprint and your worst day cycle. So you can't choose healthy partners because your nervous system doesn't recognize that safety is love, that calm is love, that consistency is love, and that stability is love. To your emotional blueprint, your worst day cycle, and your childhood wounds, all of those feel foreign, uncomfortable, they're unfamiliar. So how do you break the pattern? Well, you don't break the pattern by choosing better, or dating different people, or trying harder and making lists, or just journaling or reading books, or even just watching videos like these. I mean, don't get me wrong, these help. They might help you see some aspects of your pattern and gain some new information, and they're a place to start. But this isn't enough. This won't break your emotional blueprint or your worst day cycle. The only way you can break through this is you have to discover the authentic self cycle and emotional authenticity. Inside of the authentic self cycle, the remedy to the worst day cycle is truth, responsibility, healing, and forgiveness. The first stage is truth. This means we have to start seeing our childhood emotional blueprint with brutal clarity. Like we have to admit what's really happening here. We have to recognize the emotional roles we were assigned as a child. We have to name those wounds without shame or blame of our parents. This isn't about casting out parents or throwing them under the bus. We're adults now. It's our job to go become the parents that we needed when we were a child. They did their job. We need to do ours because now we're adults. And that's why step 2 is responsibility. It's now our job to put a recovery plan in place and become the parent for ourselves that we needed. We have to own our participation in our relationship choices, all of our life choices. And we have to focus on our part. Stop blaming them. And so the reason we focus on ourselves is not to blame ourselves. This isn't about shame and blame. This is about regaining our power. Because do you see, as long as they're to blame, I'm always the victim. I'm always powerless. As long as I recognize truth, I was perfectly imperfect. I did the best I could with the information I had at the time. Nobody taught me about this. But now I'm taking responsibility. I'm going to become the parent I've always needed. That's power. Self-choice, self-direction is the only way we get power, by focusing on what we can control, not the other person. And when we do that, we make healing our priority. We discover how to rewire our emotional pathways with emotional authenticity. So we start feeling the emotion that our child self couldn't feel. We start releasing the trauma-based definitions we learned in that emotional blueprint. We start regulating through emotional authenticity. We learn to regulate the chemical addiction of fear, breaking that fear-based cycle and transforming the shame into our inherent authentic worth, reclaiming our inherent worth and value. When we attack this and make it our priority, this is how we dismantle the false persona. And when we do that, we get to stage 4, forgiveness. You see, from this place, we can not only forgive them, we can forgive ourselves. Which means our past doesn't define us anymore. And our childhood wounds stop picking our partners. The trauma-based version of ourselves no longer runs our present. Our authentic self does that. So I want you to remember, none of you are broken. You were just programmed. And your program can be rewritten.